So we can look at equations as a balance, and as long as we keep the equation balanced, everything's okay. The goal is, though, that we want to solve for the variable as well. So we can do whatever we want, but remember there is a goal now, not just keeping it balanced, but also solve and get the variable by itself. So another way of looking at equation solve is undoing the calculation, and we want to undo it by using the opposite operation. We undo plus with minus. We undo times with divide. We undo square roots with squares. Okay, as long as we can undo that equation, that operation, we can solve an equation. So here I have a times by 5. So I want to undo it with a divide by 5. And I want to make sure I balance the equation. Okay, so I do the same on the other side. On the left-hand side, I get a. On the right-hand side, I get 4. So 5 times 4 equals 20. And get rid of the plus 7, I want to undo with the minus 7. Minus 7 on both sides. Remember that I have to keep that balanced. 0 pair. A is equal to 11. We can check again. 11 plus 7 equals 18. Minus 5 becomes, we need to undo it with a plus 5. Plus 5. 0 pair. A is equal to 20. Undo a plus 7 with a minus 7. Balance with a minus 7. We get x is equal to negative 8. Okay, so negative 8 plus 7 equals negative 1. That all works. Okay, so again, we can always check by substituting back in. Here we have a times 4, so we're going to divide by 4. Divide by 4. X is equal to 30 divided by 4 simplifies to 15 over 2. We could also say that's equal to 7.5. Minus 7, the inverse or opposite is 17 plus 17. Okay, so minus 17, inverse is plus 17. 0 pair, we're left with just m equals 39. Again, just double check, make sure that you're not just moving it across and doing a plus. We can easily make mistakes with if you're transferring things. Okay, so here this is not a minus 3 but a times by negative 3. So we're going to divide by negative 3. That's going to give us x. We need to balance. Divide by negative 3. Positive 18 divided by negative 3 is negative 6. Here, is this a plus 5 or minus 5? When I look at that, I don't know. Does the minus go with a 5 or the a? Well, the minus always goes with the term afterwards. So that's a minus a. Not a negative a, but a minus a. That's a plus 5. That's really what I want to get rid of. I want to get rid of that plus 5 with a minus 5. We're not going to get rid of it with a plus 5 because that minus doesn't go with the 5. Now we have to be careful here because now this is a 0 pair, but I'm not left with a, I'm left with negative a equals 5. Well, I can probably intuitively solve this. The opposite of a equals 5, well that must be negative 5. I can also undo that by saying, well that's a times by negative 1. I can just divide by negative. That leaves me with a. Positive divided by negative gives me the negative 5 that I want. I'll show you how we can do it slightly differently with h, but let's move on here. So we're going to undo. So should I undo the plus or the times by negative 3 first? Well, really, if we're not sure, the best way maybe to do it is opposite BEDMAS, because we're undoing the calculation, so we should do the calculation backwards. Last thing we would have done here is plus 2. So that's the first thing that I think of doing is undoing the plus 2 with a minus 2. So I end up with negative 3x equals positive 15. Okay, here I'm going to divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3, and I end up with x equals negative 5. Okay, now just double check that. Negative times negative is positive 15 plus 2 is positive 17. And I want to make sure that I do the opposite, the plus first, because that if I do the divide first, technically I could, but then that means I have to divide everything by negative 3, which doesn't divide very nicely. So it's much easier to do it in the opposite operation. So addition, subtraction first, multiplication last. And that way we're undoing the bed mass. So for here, this is fairly similar, and that's a minus 2a. So I really should get rid of that plus. That's not a minus 5, but a plus 5. I'm going to do this slightly differently. I don't like the minus a, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it positive by adding it to both sides. There's a 0 pair, it disappears. And now instead of having to deal with a negative 2a, I've got a positive 2a. Much nicer to work with. I can now get rid of the 45. Okay, there's my 0 pair. So I end up with negative 40 is equal to 2a. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. A is equal to negative 20. Okay, so there's my solution. Okay, so these are some examples. Again, make sure that you show the steps. It's very important. If you're just getting answers by thinking through it in your head, that's not going to be good enough. You have to show your steps. I will not mark answers only. You must show steps. You must show opposites. You must show balance. Without that, I'm going to make you redo that work. So make sure you're doing that in all of your work. Show balance, show opposites. So this link is going to get you to a balance app, and you're going to actually manipulate the balance to actually solve equations. It's important to understand, because that's how physically the balance works is how the equation works. Whatever you do physically, there's an algebraic equivalent.